Part of me is that like I'm just so black pilled around AI where I'm just like, but then I think I have a lot of interesting thoughts around it as well, and so I'll be intrigued by it. Yeah, no, it'll be a fun conversation. I think it'll be fun because it'll be probably more conversational than it will be just me like rambling. But that's not to say, I mean, I reserve the right to just ramble, I guess, too. I don't know.
AI and illustration styles. I don't know if they can coexist in a perfect world. We're here to figure it out with Kirk Wallace today, talking about AI, illustration styles, and how to stay relevant without ceding your creative agency. Hi, my name is Anika, and this is Able Heads, a Canadian podcast where we chat creativity, business, the creator economy, how AI is really impacting our everyday lives as creatives. I've been chatting with Kirk for the past few episodes, and we've been talking about career transitions and arcs, showing up authentically in your work, and how to tell your brand story. So I encourage you to go back and watch those older episodes. They're invigorating, in my biased opinion. But without further ado, let's welcome Kirk to the podcast and really dive into all about AI and illustration. What was your emotional reaction when you first noticed AI tools in creativity or creative fields?
It's funny because it's subtle, right? And that's the intelligence of like the subtlety to the tools of like it started as like content aware fill like 10 years ago or whatever. Like, you know, like that's where I start getting a little bit annoying where I'm like, well, technically you've been using machine language and neural networks for many years, but like in the way that we understand it today as like AI, usually my gut reaction to a lot of stuff is just like pretty apathetic, maybe, if that's the right word. Like I just don't really care. It's definitely has not been inspiring or exciting for me. But it doesn't rage me either. It's usually either like, okay, another thing I'm not going to use, which is fine, and hopefully this is helpful for somebody, um, or annoyance, but not a strong, not getting on Twitter and being like, I can't believe they implemented AI into the program. I think that's part of it too, is I'm just like, I'm so well aware of what everyone's sort of agenda is. And I'm not shocked that like Adobe is trying to make money like in a more clever way. I'm like completely comfortable with that. Because that's what we sign up for by existing. So but the emotion of AI overall is like there's like a more doominess to the larger idea of it, but as it pertains to the creativity, it's mostly like, I don't. Good luck with it, I guess. I haven't used it much, but I'm intrigued by like how it can help workflows with like the agentic stuff and all that. But like, it also usually fails to impress, frankly. Like when it comes to
Yeah.
creativity, I feel like it's pretty often just failing to impress.
Yeah, I think it's only inspiring and impressive for me when it comes to generation of video content, but that too
Sure.
is like very niche because I don't want to generate every video using AI, and it's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Too. I was experimenting with OpenAI Sora too, and I was
Sure.
experimenting with it, and I used my photograph and my video as input, to generate cameo of me talking to the camera, and yeah, it was creepy.
It's
To
creepy.
say the least. How real it was, and how real and inauthentic it was at the same time, like it. I knew that it was AI generated, but at the same time, the intonation, the words that I say, my accent,
Mm,
the way I say some things, it picked it up by just me saying five numbers or three numbers to the camera. Like that
really?
part was crazy. So you record yourself, um with your camera, you get your front profile, you get your side profile, and you record yourself saying three numbers, and that's
Right.
it. And it generates a cameo, and now you enter whatever input you have, which is text, and then it spits out the video, and it's crazy accurate. Like, yeah, it blew
That's
my
wild.
mind. Yeah, it's like if this is happening now, I don't know if the Marvel universe is going to be true in like the next 5 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's always been impressive technically. I'll never not
Yeah.
be impressed at the technology of it. I'm just like, I guess there's the difference between the words inspiration and,
Hmm.
you know, if I were still really into tech and programming and stuff, I'd be probably super inspired by it, I think. But creatively, I'm like, it's like it's failing to swing me. But I do the thing that I think has probably been the most intriguing for me, other than like it helping me summarize emails and stuff like that, which is like to me not in my world enough that is worth conversing about. But like B-roll clips of like maybe panning behind my back if I'm drawing and being able to like extend that clip an extra second or two it
Mm.
feels like kind of like content aware Phil. Like, it's like I made a mistake when I took the photo of the thing and there's a hair on the shirt and I can remove it. Love that. And like the idea that I can like, I clicked stop on the camera, the video shot too early. I wish it could just extend a second. To me,
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, that seems very helpful for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also the gray area around even that, because I had sent in a headshot, and this kind of reminds me that I extended your headshot without your permission in
Yeah,
Photoshop. And someone did that to me 3 years ago, and this was when AI wasn't as good as it is
sure.
today. And they content aware my body in a weird way.
Oh,
And
interesting.
it was so interesting to see. And I was like, oh, I don't actually approve of that. So I don't think you should do I don't think you should have done this. And I'm realizing now that I did that, but I made sure that I only extended the background. So I think it's kind of like a gray area where you don't know what people are using it for. And
Mm,
you don't know whether it's commercially safe. um
sure.
you don't know what's right and wrong, and it's definitely not inspirational, because if I'm generating vectors using AI,
Mm.
uh why would I do that? Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. So do you ever use any AI tools in terms of creativeness, I guess, like style transfer and stuff? Would you ever use that?
The other thing is like I know a lot of people are like seedy and dodgy around this conversation. I want to say right up front, like I would love to be canceled for using AI. Like I wouldn't want nothing more than for somebody to be angry with me for doing something because I'm fine with it. So everything I'm going to say is going to be the fullest like truth, but because I feel like there's like a very like people are kind of afraid to talk about this topic, and I think it's the stupidest thing in the world because I really don't think it's on us. But I content aware like crazy, of course. Expanding an image, if it's like a nice photo, I need to like expand outward a little bit. But even that is like that's so self stuff. Like for client, like I'm also thinking client stuff. Like I don't know that I've used it. Definitely nothing in video because I don't know it well enough for video work yet, and I'm always like afraid of how much money it's going to cost for me to do like the credits for videos. Like I'm always like I don't know, that seems out of my league. But I've tried to use like if I can't get like the perfect mock-up, I'll like try to like tell it to like create a blank image of a book tilted against a thing. And then I can that much more easily like bash my book cover into it. I think no, like I definitely haven't done it like for concepts, like give me more concepts. A lot of written stuff. I think mostly it's written stuff of like a Skillshare course that I'm working on, and I dump like
Mm.
12 pages of nonsense, and then I'm like, can you please help me like tidy this up? But I don't think I've had it create any imagery other than content aware stuff. Or like I suppose like there's like color generation tools in Illustrator where I'm just like mix it up and give me a new idea, but then I always get my hands back in it. Um, yeah, I think it's like hopefully it doesn't kill the rest of this entire conversation, but like not a ton, certainly not a ton, and possibly not any. I don't know.
Have your clients ever reached out to you and asked you to use something that they've created using AI and then take that as a reference?
Here's one thing I did do, but it was because we were playing with it. We wanted to make a stress ball of a character that
Hmm.
I made, and the idea was to have the character be like a distorted version of it. And the best way to distort the character was to have a robot do it and then kind of morph its face. Because every time I would try to like distort or morph its face, it felt too intentional. Like it was like I was choosing where the eye was going. It wasn't like truly random. And so we
Hmm.
did that, and then we had this like distorted version of this cat as like a stress ball, which made it really funny. And then the packaging was kind of all wrapped up in this idea of like, don't let AI make your characters or something. So it was like kind of this meta commentary. It wasn't like super highbrow or anything, but um, they did request. They were like, "Can you use AI to do it? Because we think that would help make it most authentic." And happily, I did. But I haven't had anyone come to me of like, "Can you just do like and just like get them done through AI and like we can clean them up or
Hmm.
anything like that." But again, I think that goes back to a lot of the conversations that we've had previously around like I think I've done a pretty decent job of like most people don't hop on a call with me and be like, oh, Kirk, I know you're a big fan of AI. Like everyone kind of gets my vibe of like, yeah, I'm usually probably going to be kind of counter to most of what's going on with that type of
Hmm.
stuff. So I think they know not to maybe. which I think I
Yeah.
can pat myself on the back of like, I don't get a bunch of people being like, well, just do AI to make the AI. But I mean, I get requests, but they're not authentic requests. They're just like coming in through Behance of like, we need
Hmm.
somebody to like, generate 100 different versions of a character and maybe you can use AI. But it's not like, hi, Kirk, we're a big fan of your work and we want to do this. It's more just like they come in as like junky emails.
Yeah, those that reminds me of those NFT days when people would do that
Right.
using AI. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that kind of reminds me of growing up in South Asia is culturally art was not ever taken seriously in South Asia, and that
Yeah.
meant people printing stuff off the internet for much lesser than what the actual art costed. And
Mm.
now recreating that art with AI kind of reminds me of that similar parallel where people are recreating cheap AI art and then discounting the real value of what creativity brings. Not to say I'm completely opposed to AI. I use AI in my workflow. I love recolor artwork just to get inspired. I then go back and tweak, make changes, whatever. I
Sure.
use it in my text form. I use it for automation, but I don't use it to generate something and then just use that off the bat. And I also don't get requests for it. Like I get requests to train people to use AI, but I don't ever get
Mm.
requests to make stuff with AI, which is a weird line. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that.
I'm curious about the cultural divide because I think that's always been something that's intrigued me. Of uh, I suppose here we value it. I guess possibly more than Southeast Asia in particular, but that's
Hmm.
kind of I don't have the best ability to speak on this. Right, it's a little awkward for me, but like that's a pretty low bar to be fair, and I don't think America has like the highest bar of quality themselves either. And I suppose maybe certain. I think about maybe Europe. I don't know where it would be there, but there is. I think if I were to look around more, I would see that it is running rampant in many places. And like, and the theft, like all the darkest parts of AI, I think are definitely something to be aware of. Fortunately, I think I can pretty much not think about it because I'm like, look, I make boutique illustrations for people that care about detail and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't mean it's not kind of coming for me. And I'm sure we'll get to that point in the conversation, but I'm sure if I looked around, or like you said, if I went to India or even went to like some of these other places in America, like not even other places physically, but just like in the tiers of work that I'm less interested in, around like, I don't know, making Facebook ads or something like where you have to come out 400 different ads a week or whatever, or working in house maybe, right? Like advertising where it's a lot more aggressive and a lot more about quantity over quality.
Hmm.
I bet it's running rampant. And I think it would grind me down big time. I'm just really privileged and fortunate and lucky that I can pretty much stay for now ahead of the. I feel like it's like a water kind of rising. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
kind of ahead, but like that water is going to start rising pretty quickly where I need to like either get really, really, really good at something or start adopting it that much more or start looking into carpentry or something. I don't know.
Yeah, DIY your way through life.
Yeah.
I mean, people are doing that. Not to discount that at all. I think it's so interesting that you said that art is taken so differently everywhere in the world. But I think the general concept, and I know we chatted about this earlier, is the pricing aspect of it, where
Mm-hmm.
as human beings or as a general population, people always want to go for things that cost them less. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
AI doesn't do that, but the people generating it, putting it up online, and then the rest of the population buying it makes it lesser. But then in the bigger picture, to run those AI systems, it's costing you more energy.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know who's winning at the end of the day. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I think I'm at a lack of words too. So yeah, it's it's
I think the
interesting.
easiest, we're all losing, right? Like, and this is where like I don't want to like turn an episode into like the horrors of the world, but like to just put the blanket
Yeah.
statement of like I want to state that like I am a true believer that like as much as I want to be inspired by the world, I think all of these things are painting toward like there's a general bad
Hmm.
vibe happening across the board across the world, right? And I think most people would agree with us there, and that's why like I state it once, and I don't need to like continue to be like, oh, everything is so bad. We get it. We all know it. So I'm like kind of like trying to operate under the pretense of like, yes, we all know that now. Where can I find the more interesting conversation inside of that? Because the I feel like this episode could have been 45 seconds long of just being like, yeah, it's bad. We're all bad. This is not good. Nothing is
Yeah.
good is happening. And like nothing is inspiring. Let's assume that and try to operate inside of that. And I'm saying that to the listeners, right? Because it's like, yeah, can we have an interesting conversation inside that? Um, and yeah, I do feel like there is an interesting, I forget the term I often try to like say, because I'm not good with words really, but like the bar is just like the barrier of entry is kind of being destroyed. And before you could just be like a Facebook, oh cute, you could be like a Facebook ad person and just work a job like that and be totally content, right? Because there's lots of people that don't want to do like crazy big concept illustration and
Mm.
stuff. They just want to have a day job where they get to make fun images. I think that's going away big time, which means either people are not getting the jobs or they have to train extra super hard and start coming for my job, frankly, right? And it crowds the space in certain ways, um, which is probably ultimately also a healthy thing for an individual, but also, again, maybe not, because
Yeah.
why do we need
Yeah.
to always be like fighting for it doesn't always have to be a rat race, I suppose, hopefully.
What do you think are some touch points where AI wouldn't make a difference when it comes to being creative, other than like the creative sensibilities and like your human touch? Other than that,
Feel like you might have just taken away any of the ones I would have said around, like we had the conversation around there's the
yeah,
hands, there's the brain, and there's the heart. And like
yeah,
the brain is a little bit more difficult to take away from, and the heart is really, really difficult to take away from. I think something a year ago I was really excited about talking about, and maybe I've exhausted it to myself, but like process, I think, is going to become that much more important to see the way something is made. Because when I made my wooden toy, it was like a lot of people would say like, "Oh, cool! Like, are you getting them 3D printed, or who's manufacturing them?" And that wasn't an implication of AI, but it was adjacent, right? It was like
mm,
something else doing the work that I'm working on, and me being like, "No, no, no, I'm making them." And then I realized like I had to do a whole YouTube series about like how I'm making them to prove that I'm making them, and then people were much more interested in buying that. And we think about like the TikToks that we see or the YouTube shorts that we see, and we see someone chiseling stone, and we're intrigued because we want to see that people are actually making it. Um, because I do think that there is, at least for a while, there is an inherent, as someone that doesn't believe in anything magically or cosmically or religiously, I do somehow still think that the human DNA has this draw toward reality and like knows the difference. Like you said, when you saw yourself speaking back to yourself through Sora, it was like something's off here. And it's not even a technical thing of like, oh, I see the eye, like technically the pixels. It's more just a magical connection. It's the same reason why we like fall in love with people, or like when we like brush up against someone that we love, like we feel a rush. And
mm,
I think that level of like intimacy that exists throughout our entire world, it doesn't stop at the consumption of artwork or music or literature or any of those things. I have to believe that there's something magical about it. Um, so whatever that answer is, of like that's where I think it won't fully win. I think, which is that's the scary division of like the work that I do. I often refer to myself not as an artist. I think I'm like very much a designer that
mm,
is like commercially driven, and like I'm trying to lean more toward the emotional side of what I do and like being more of an artist. But because I'm like commercially serving and stuff, it does feel that much more replaceable. If I were someone that made like weird abstract like films and like avant-garde music and stuff, I would feel that much less worried about it.
mm.
I feel like I'm in a world where like sometimes clients will be like, yeah, I don't really give a shit how emotional this thing is, like we need to get it done. And so I'm like, okay, do I become a fine artist instead? Because then AI can't touch me there, right? Like it's like, what is my like shield,
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I think the human connection is definitely the way to go, because there are some aspects to art and creativity that nothing else can touch. Hit the nail on the head. Where I think it's so important to have that connection, and if you don't, if it's like going to a live music event and not feeling anything. If AI doesn't do that to you, then it's not worth it, and I don't think it is going to, at least not for the next 10 years. But I may be dating myself saying that. I don't know what's in the future, but I think I see new AI roles coming up, like AI curator or prompt designer, other than the tech
Mm,
jobs. I mean, there
mm-hmm.
are
Of
creative AI roles coming up, and I don't
course.
know how that makes me feel. I think a lot of schools, I talked to this educator, a professor at CS, California State University, and
Okay.
they were talking about using AI in their curriculum. And it was so interesting to me because they were like, yeah, we're using AI, and they use AI for the capstone project that they're doing. They use AI for regular classwork, and it was interesting to see how people are adopting it. I think it kind of brings the pressure to young people, young creators who
Yeah.
are coming up in the industry, and they're like, oh, do we have to use AI every single day, or will I use AI and be part of the game? Will I not use AI and be left out? And there's so many questions around that, where how do you think educational pathways need to adapt in the need of AI, or AI assisted creation for that matter?
Yeah, I don't. I'm always weary of advice, but I speak to a lot of younger people. When I talk to students in particular, I'm like that much more careful of like what should I do. My answer really often is like it's an answer I don't love, but it's like be selfish. Like look, you got a degree, you want to be a designer. If you have to use like you have to be happy. That's the most important thing. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that like to not learn Photoshop because it felt like cheating in 2004, I think would put you behind. And
Mm.
there's a such thing as getting in your own way. And I take this from somebody that is like about as like kind of anarcho, like fuck the world as they can be. I still am like, look, do you want to eat or do you not want to eat? Like, I get it. We all want to fight the fight. And I love it. I love it so much. I truly do. And um like if you do what you got to do to get the damn job, I really believe in that. I think that's kind of like we talked about pricing shame maybe at one point. Like I think there's a lot of shame around succeeding, frankly. And I think that they can be really toxic and harmful, especially for younger people, right? Especially people that are active and for the movement and for progress. And I truly can't overstate how much I love that. And like I think you kind of do have to join them at least a little bit, right? Like, well, how can you join and then influence from the inside and things like that? So I'm just like, look, if you, I'm not saying like take a job you hate to go and be an AI architect or anything, but it's so I think of it like TikTok, right? Like a lot of people my age, you know, mid 30s are kind of like they cringe at TikTok in particular or reels. Like, I don't want to have to like dance along to my music. And I totally understand. And there's two things I could do. I could not have a career being an illustrator ever, and that sucks. Or I can like use Instagram and TikTok and stuff and kind of lean into the trend. I still try to take my own approach to it that feels authentic to me. But if I were my truest authentic self, I wouldn't have Instagram at all, period. Like that would be my best life. But the better life is that I get to be a working artist and I get to have the life that I have, which I really love. So, okay, I make a compromise. And I think that you can probably extrapolate a little bit. And the curve starts getting a little bit more intense when you get into these things that you really hate. But like, look, none of us like using AI. And I talk to a lot of younger people that are in their early 20s or even younger. And they're like, I don't like social media. I think it's bad. And I love that for you. But then you're also looking at me saying, how do I become an illustrator? And the only answer I have is the one that I used, which is, well, I use social media. And if you have another way to do it, great, go. But don't get in your own way and make your own, don't starve for it unless you're really willing to starve for it. I don't know. I hope that's coming across clear of like, yeah, use AI if you have to use AI. Like you have to be happy and do what you're doing in certain things, right? Like it's like saying like, oh, I want to run fast, but I don't want to use Nike shoes. Totally understand. I don't like child sweatshops either. And do you want to run fast? You know, it's kind of like one of those things, I think.
Makes me think whether or not I will be using AI to present my work, or to pitch an idea, um, to make AI generate something, some text that will help me while I'm pitching myself, or telling my clients what values I'm bringing to the table, or yeah, it's a lot of conversation. And I think AI and the mindset shift with AI is important, and really finding what's right for you in that moment. So it may not be applicable to you or me, and it may not be applicable to someone listening, but it may be applicable to an XYZ person. Like, it's different for everyone. It looks different, it feels different, and I think that sums up AI in a nutshell. Yeah. It's
And I think I think a lot of people that have an influence over the way we think around this topic are in some sort of privileged state or this like in power state where they get to say like, oh, don't do AI. Like whoever it is, right? Like whoever the coolest, best designer is that's talking shit on AI is like, yeah, well, thanks, man. But like you already made it. Like, and that's me, right? Like I kind of like, who knows where I'm at in 5 years, but like right now, like I'm doing pretty good. And so to speak about this, like as if I know what I'm talking about, I think it's like, it's really easy to, again, it comes down to shame and stuff like that. And we truly don't know. And like you said, that's why I love talking to younger people because they have such a different pulse on it. But I do agree where it is that thing where like, it's easy to shun it when you don't need to use it because you're in a fortunate spot where you're getting paid to not use it. And if I were 22 coming out of college, my perspective might be very, very different because I might not be able to like be on my high horse about it and still have success, right? So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I think what you're saying is like I don't judge anybody for any thoughts of it. I'm lucky that I don't have to use it. The moment I have to use it or go get a job at a job I don't want, I'm using it. Like I would rather use it and do a job I love than like have to go do something I don't want to do. Like it is all about me, and that sounds so silly, but I hope everybody can understand it's all about me. Like I chose this job because I want to do the job that I want to do. So if I got to use AI to do it, I'll try to push back as much as I can, but like it's better than working at a job I don't want to work.
No, that makes total sense. I think that's a good way to close the episode as well. So thank you so much, Kirk, for talking about AI. I know this conversation was, I don't know, difficult. I think a lot of people have issues about AI and the ethical issues, the legal issues. How are you going to use it in your business? How can you sell it to a client? And I don't think we touched a lot on those because there is a lot of gray area. And I don't want to be the channel to say
Right.
use this and that where I don't even know the legality of it. So go consult your lawyer before you sell your artwork in your region, in your country, and not a YouTube channel.
Right.
So yeah, I hope AI and illustration can coexist in the future. Yeah, 5 years from now, but that's my only qualm about it. But thank you
I
so
do
much for
too.
being here. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks, Anika.